People worldwide often have mixed impressions of Americans, influenced by factors such as the U.S. involvement in international affairs and the behavior of some American tourists abroad. Events like the Iraq War and the Guantanamo Bay detention camp have been significant international issues that contribute to these perceptions. While every country faces controversies, those involving America often make global headlines. Today, we're exploring 10 countries where Americans might not feel particularly welcome, either due to locals' attitudes, government policies, or both. First on our list is Saudi Arabia. Known for its conservative Islamic traditions, has historically posed challenges for foreigners, particularly Americans. However, gradual reforms led by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman are opening the country to tourism and promoting gender equality, offering hope for the future. Certain behaviors typical in the U.S. may be inappropriate or offensive in Saudi Arabia. For example, public displays of affection, common in the West, are frowned upon here. Taking photos of people without their permission can lead to severe repercussions. Additionally, modest dressing is expected. Women should avoid wearing short shorts and leggings, and even men in shorts might draw disapproving looks. Respect for local customs is paramount. Small gestures like not pointing with your finger, taking off your shoes before entering homes, and avoiding using your left hand for specific tasks can show respect. Furthermore, showing respect to elders and adhering to norms of hospitality and etiquette are crucial. Despite the country's progressive steps, its conservative fabric still dictates much of daily life, making it essential for visitors to tread carefully and respect these long-standing traditions. To visit Saudi Arabia, Americans need a valid passport and a tourist visa, which are available through the e-visa system. The visa allows multiple entries, is valid for 1 year, and permits a stay of up to 90 days per visit. It's essential to have travel insurance and to be aware of the strict regulations regarding behavior, attire, and conduct within the country. Despite the challenges and warnings, some Americans still visit Saudi Arabia. Many report that while the cultural adjustments can be significant, the experience is rewarding. They often speak of the hospitality they receive and the unique opportunity to explore a country rich in history and tradition. Visitors who respect the local customs generally find that their efforts to understand and adapt to the culture are appreciated, leading to positive interactions and memorable experiences. Next, let's explore Russia, where historical tensions continue affecting American visitors' perceptions. The Cold War era, marked by intense rivalry and suspicion, still casts a shadow over U.S.-Russia relations. This historical baggage, which includes the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, is compounded by contemporary political tensions, particularly over issues like the conflict in Ukraine and allegations of interference in each other's internal affairs. Understanding and respecting Russian customs and social norms is vital for American travelers. While Russians are known for hospitality to friends, they can be reserved and suspicious towards strangers, especially from the U.S. It's essential to be polite, avoid discussing sensitive political topics, and respect Russian traditions and etiquette. For Americans, traveling to Russia has become increasingly difficult. Obtaining a visa is demanding and often complicated by bureaucratic hurdles and delays. Applicants need a valid passport, an invitation, visa support from a Russian entity, a completed visa application form, and other supporting documents. The process can take several weeks, and it is recommended that they apply well before the planned travel date. Despite the challenges and warnings, some Americans still choose to visit Russia. Those who do often find that while the initial reception can be frosty, respectful, and open-minded behavior helps bridge the gap. Many travelers speak of the rich cultural experiences, the grandeur of Russian architecture, and the country's deep history. They often highlight the warmth of individual interactions once trust is established and express a deeper understanding of the complexities of U.S.-Russia relations through their experiences. Next, let's delve into Americans' unique challenges when traveling to Cuba. The trade embargo, established in 1958, has created a web of restrictions that make travel and economic exchanges between the two countries difficult. Despite a brief thaw in relations during the Obama administration, the embargo remains largely in place, complicating travel plans for many Americans. Americans are restricted to 12 official categories of travel to Cuba, most related to educational or humanitarian purposes. While some adventurous travelers attempt to bypass these restrictions by traveling through third countries, such practices are fraught with risks. Violating U.S. travel regulations can lead to significant legal troubles and hefty fines. Once in Cuba, Americans find themselves in a very different environment. The dual currency system means that U.S. dollars are not accepted, requiring visitors to bring cash in euros or other acceptable currencies. Furthermore, American credit and debit cards do not work, necessitating careful financial planning. The political atmosphere can also be tense. While the U.S. maintains a military base at Guantanamo Bay, regular citizens have minimal interaction with the Cuban populace and are confined mainly to tourist areas under scrutiny. To enter Cuba, Americans need a valid passport, a Cuban tourist card, visa, and travel insurance. Despite these challenges and warnings, some Americans still choose to visit Cuba. Those who do often describe their experiences as eye-opening. They mention the vibrant culture, the Cuban people's friendliness, and the island's beauty. However, they also highlight the need for careful preparation, both financially and culturally, to navigate the unique challenges. Many travelers report that understanding and respecting the local customs and political context significantly enhances their experience and helps avoid potential issues. Next, let's explore the dangerous and complex situation Americans face in Iraq. The U.S. invasion in 2003 and the subsequent years of conflict have left deep scars, both physically and politically. The presence of various militant groups and ongoing sectarian violence make Iraq one of the most hazardous places for Americans to visit. The U.S. government frequently updates travel advisories for Iraq, often warning of high risks, including terrorism, kidnapping, and armed conflict. American travelers need a valid passport and a visa to enter Iraq, which can be obtained from an Iraqi embassy or consulate. Iraqi authorities do not easily grant special permissions to travel, and it's crucial to have a comprehensive travel plan and emergency contingencies in place. Local attitudes towards Americans can be hostile, stemming from years of war and the continuing presence of U.S. interests in the region. The cultural and religious differences further complicate interactions. Simple misunderstandings or cultural faux pas can escalate quickly in such a tense environment. Respecting local customs, including dress codes, particularly in religious areas, and being aware of significant historical and cultural sites sensitive to local sentiments is essential. For those who still decide to visit, the experiences can be profound yet fraught with risk. Some Americans travel to Iraq for humanitarian work, journalism, or personal reasons. They often report the importance of understanding the local customs and showing deep respect for the culture. Many recount the Iraq people's resilience and hospitality and the region's rich historical significance. However, they also emphasize the need for constant vigilance, thorough preparation, and a solid support network. These travelers highlight that while their experiences can be profoundly impactful, the risks are significant, and the environment remains highly precarious. Next, let's delve into Yemen, a country with profound risks for American visitors. Since the closure of the U.S. Embassy in 2015, Americans in Yemen have been left without consular support, heightening the risks for those who find themselves in the country. The civil war in Yemen has created a humanitarian disaster, with widespread famine, disease, and a lack of essential services. This chaotic environment allows criminal elements and terrorist groups to operate with impunity. Americans, with their perceived association with Western interests, are particularly at risk of kidnappings and violent attacks. Travel to Yemen is highly discouraged due to the ongoing conflict and severe security threats. Infrastructure in Yemen is severely compromised. Paved roads are rare outside the major cities, and the healthcare system is on the brink of collapse. These conditions make travel not only tricky, but also exceedingly dangerous. Emergency services are practically non-existent, and the likelihood of encountering violent confrontations is high. Cultural and religious sensitivities require visitors to know local customs and dress codes. Americans need a valid passport and a visa to enter Yemen, which can be challenging to obtain. The U.S. government has a Level 4 travel advisory advising against all travel to Yemen. The combination of a hostile environment, severe infrastructural challenges, and the lack of governmental support creates an exceedingly dangerous situation for Americans. Despite these severe warnings, a few Americans have traveled to Yemen for humanitarian or journalistic reasons. They describe their experiences as deeply impactful, but highly hazardous. These travelers highlight the dire humanitarian crisis and the resilience of the Yemeni people. However, they stress the critical need for thorough preparation, local contacts, and extreme caution. Their stories often underscore the profound risks and the life-threatening challenges they faced. Next, let's explore Venezuela, a country beset by political turmoil and economic collapse. The U.S. State Department has repeatedly issued travel advisories warning Americans of the dangers of traveling to Venezuela. Since the departure of U.S. Embassy staff from Caracas in 2019, Americans in Venezuela have faced increased vulnerability. The Venezuelan government, under Nicolás Maduro, has been known to arrest foreigners arbitrarily, and the distinction between tourists and perceived threats is often blurred. This has led to wrongful detentions and harsh treatment of American visitors. Traveling to Venezuela requires a valid passport and a visa, which can be obtained from Venezuelan consulates. The U.S. Department of State has a Level 4 travel advisory in place for Venezuela, advising against all travel due to crime, civil unrest, poor health infrastructure, and arbitrary arrest and detention of U.S. citizens. Additionally, the economic conditions in Venezuela mean that many services taken for granted in other countries, such as reliable transportation and healthcare, are either unavailable or substandard. The high crime rates, including kidnappings and violent robberies, further exacerbate the dangers for foreign travelers. Even in relatively safer areas, the lack of infrastructure and basic services makes everyday life challenging and precarious. Despite the significant risks, some Americans travel to Venezuela, often for personal or humanitarian reasons. They frequently report the necessity of extreme caution due to the high crime levels and political instability. These travelers emphasize staying informed about local conditions, having reliable local contacts, and avoiding areas of unrest. Some recount being deeply moved by the warmth and resilience of the Venezuelan people despite the hardships they face. However, they also highlight the constant need for vigilance and preparedness due to the unpredictable and often dangerous environment. The potential for arbitrary detention, violent crime, and severe hardships necessitates extreme caution and, preferably, reconsideration of travel plans to this troubled nation. Next, let's delve into Afghanistan, a country plagued by continuous conflict and instability. The U.S. military's withdrawal in 2021 left a power vacuum that has been filled by various militant groups, making the security situation extremely volatile. The U.S. State Department advises against all travel to Afghanistan, citing the high risk of kidnapping, terrorist attacks, and armed conflict. The Taliban's control over large parts of the country has led to a resurgence of strict interpretations of Sharia law, significantly impacting daily life and the safety of foreign visitors. Americans in particular are at high risk due to historical and ongoing political tensions. The risk of being targeted for kidnapping and violence is extremely high, and the lack of a functional government means there are no reliable security measures in place to protect travelers. The infrastructure in Afghanistan is severely damaged, with limited access to essential services such as healthcare and transportation. The threat of landmines and unexploded ordnance adds to the physical dangers present in the country. Traveling to Afghanistan requires a valid passport and a visa, which can be obtained from Afghan embassies and consulates. The U.S. Department of State has a Level 4 travel advisory in place, advising against all travel to Afghanistan due to the critical threat of terrorism, civil unrest, kidnapping, and armed conflict. Despite these severe warnings, some Americans still travel to Afghanistan for humanitarian work, journalism, or personal reasons. Those who do often describe their experiences as both harrowing and deeply impactful. They highlight the resilience and hospitality of the Afghan people, but also stress the importance of understanding local customs and the political situation. The risks are profound, and many travelers report needing extensive preparation, including security measures and contingency plans. Their stories often underscore the importance of cautious and respectful interaction with local communities and the ever-present need for vigilance and preparedness in such a volatile environment. For Americans, the combination of an unstable political environment, high risk of violent crime, and lack of support systems makes Afghanistan one of the most dangerous destinations in the world. The challenges and dangers far outweigh the potential benefits, necessitating a solid reconsideration of travel plans to this region. Next, let's explore Turkmenistan, a country with a controlled and restrictive travel environment. Turkmenistan offers a unique but highly controlled travel experience that is challenging for Americans. The government imposes strict regulations on tourism, allowing only a limited number of visitors each year and closely monitoring their activities. American tourists must hire private guides, which can be expensive, and are generally permitted only a few days to explore the country. The government's control extends to public spaces and interactions. Grand statues and state-controlled monuments dominate the landscape, reflecting the authoritarian regime's tight grip on the country. While the locals are generally friendly, the pervasive surveillance and restrictions can make visitors feel constantly watched and constrained. Understanding Turkmenistan's cultural and political landscape is crucial for Americans. The government's restrictive nature means that any perceived dissent or inappropriate behavior can lead to significant consequences, including fines or detention. Visitors must be cautious and respectful of local laws and customs, ensuring they do not inadvertently offend or break regulations. Traveling to Turkmenistan requires a valid passport and a visa, which can be obtained through Turkmen embassies and consulates. The process often involves rigorous screening, and visitors must be prepared for potential delays and additional scrutiny. Despite Turkmenistan's beauty and unique cultural experiences, the stringent controls and potential risks associated with the government's authoritarian regime make it a challenging destination for American travelers. Thorough preparation and a clear understanding of the local laws and expectations are essential for a safe and respectful visit. Some Americans who have visited describe the experience as both fascinating and frustrating. They note the importance of complying with local regulations and being constantly aware of cultural norms to avoid potential issues. These travelers often highlight the richness of Turkmenistan's history and culture while cautioning about constant surveillance. Next, let's delve into Somalia, a country with severe security challenges and extreme poverty. Somalia is highly hazardous to American travelers due to its ongoing conflict, widespread poverty, and lack of effective government control. Known for the Black Hawk Down incident, Somalia faces severe security challenges. Located on Africa's eastern edge, Somalia's beautiful coastline contrasts sharply with its internal strife and dire living conditions. The U.S. State Department advises against all travel to Somalia, highlighting the high risk of kidnapping, terrorism, and violent crime. Somalia's infrastructure is severely underdeveloped, with many areas lacking paved roads and reliable services, further complicating any travel plans. In many places, essential services such as healthcare and transportation are limited or non-existent. The political situation is precarious, with ongoing conflicts between various factions. Traveling to Somalia requires a valid passport and a visa, which can be obtained from Somali embassies or consulates. Americans are often targeted for ransom by militant groups and criminal gangs, making travel extremely dangerous. For those considering travel to Somalia, the risks are substantial. The U.S. government's advice to make a will and provide DNA samples before visiting underscores the severity of the threats. Despite these severe warnings, some Americans travel to Somalia, often for humanitarian work, journalism, or personal reasons. Those who do usually describe their experiences as harrowing but deeply impactful. They highlight the extreme poverty, the dire humanitarian situation, and the resilience of the Somali people. These travelers emphasize the critical need for thorough preparation, local contacts, and extreme caution. They often recount the importance of understanding and respecting local customs and political situations to navigate the complex and dangerous environment safely. Their stories underscore the profound risks and the potential for meaningful, though perilous, engagements in such a challenging setting. Next, let's explore North Korea, the most restrictive and dangerous destination for Americans. North Korea tops the list as the most restrictive and dangerous destination for American travelers. The country's authoritarian regime, led by Kim Jong-un, imposes severe restrictions on all visitors, particularly Americans. Travel is highly controlled, and government-appointed guides must always accompany tourists. Any deviation from the approved itinerary can lead to severe consequences. Traveling to North Korea requires a valid passport and a visa, which can be obtained through an organized tour approved by the North Korean government. Independent travel is not allowed, and all visitors must be accompanied by government-appointed guides at all times. The U.S. State Department has a Level 4 travel advisory, advising against all travel due to the severe risk of arrest and long-term detention. The political tension between the U.S. and North Korea exacerbates the risks for American travelers. The regime views Americans with suspicion, and any perceived disrespect towards the leadership or state can result in harsh penalties, including lengthy detention and hard labor. The case of Otto Warmbier, an American student who was detained and later died after being returned to the U.S. in an unconscious state, highlights the severe risks involved. Visitors must follow all guidelines, avoid political discussions, and respect local customs and leadership. The constant surveillance and lack of freedom make travel in North Korea a highly controlled and risky endeavor. Despite the severe restrictions and risks, some Americans have traveled to North Korea, often out of curiosity or academic interest. Those who go usually describe the experience as surreal and heavily controlled. They highlight the importance of strict adherence to the rules and respect for local customs to avoid potential issues. Travelers often report that while the guided tours provide a glimpse into the country, they are highly sanitized and controlled, with little opportunity to interact with locals or see beyond the government-approved sites. The constant surveillance and the ever-present risk of severe punishment for any perceived infraction make North Korea one of the most challenging and dangerous destinations for American travelers. Despite its unique cultural and historical sites, the dangers associated with traveling to North Korea, including the risk of arbitrary detention and severe punishment, make it the most challenging and potentially dangerous destination for Americans. Thorough preparation and a deep understanding of the local laws and expectations are essential for a safe visit. While we don't recommend visiting any of the countries we mentioned today, one place you absolutely must visit is Japan. Its rich culture, stunning landscapes, and unique blend of tradition and modernity make it a must-see destination. Now, check out this video where we talk about 25 beautiful places you must visit in Japan. You won't want to miss it.